Good evening. My name is Ruth Striegel. I am the co-chair of the board of the New Mexico and El Paso Region Chapter of Interfaith Power and Light. I'm also on the staff here at First Congregational Church, and I want to welcome everyone here on behalf of the church. We are delighted to be hosting this wonderful meeting. We're excited that you're here, and we hope that you will have plenty of time after the festivities are over to enjoy the raffle and all the displays that we have in Fellowship Hall. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ann McCartney. I'm co-chair with Ruth of New Mexico and El Paso Region Interfaith Power and Light, and we want to thank Ruth and the church for hosting this. It's been a huge undertaking, as all of these things are, if you're doing it in person and also being live streamed. So thank you to everyone on staff and who's been helping to pull this off, to have a hybrid event. I want to introduce our board, and I think we have all of our board members here. So when I introduce you, if you just stand up, I would appreciate that. Terry Sloan, one of our long-standing board members, Cynthia Gonzalez, who's on our panel, and Emma O'Sullivan, and Arcelia S.I.S. Gastelum. So we're very excited to have our younger board members now. We've had a nice influx lately of getting younger people, including Dawson Allen, who's here, and Mazir Saleh Zibari. And I missed anybody? Judy Smith, long-standing board member, done so much for us. And Mike Prine. And also here is Odile Coyer, who's on our staff and doing the organizing down in the El Paso region, and Carlos Navarro, who's our media assistant and person who keeps us together on so many things. So I just wanted to introduce the board, and then most everyone knows our amazing executive director who's going to start us off this evening in terms of our program, and that's Joan Brown.
Thank you, Ann and Ruth, and thank you all for coming. So as they said, this is a hybrid event, and I know that there are a lot of folks out there watching on Facebook and others that will be waiting for a recording, which will be coming today, or not today, but later after tonight. But we're just pleased to be meeting in person because we haven't done that for so long. People still aren't quite comfortable doing it either, so it's just wonderful to see you here tonight. To celebrate our earth and to encourage one another in all of our work, because we faced a lot of difficult and challenging things this year, this summer in our region with the droughts and the fires and a lot of suffering. And so just wonderful to have you here, and thanks for all that you do. So I'd like to begin with a prayer this evening, and then I'm just going to give a little context for our panel that we're going to be moving into, and then I'm going to turn it over to them. I might just note, so I don't forget, at the end of your pews, there are a few, it'll be at the pew by the aisle, the center aisle. There's a few cards. If anybody, there's not enough for everybody, but if you feel drawn to have a question, I'd invite you to do that in the first part of the panel, because we're going to take a break to answer questions to our panel, and then they're going to move into a second part. So we'll be picking those up, probably about 10 minutes or so into the panel, okay? So before I begin the prayer, I'd like to just recognize that we walk and live and breathe on sacred lands here that are Tewa peoples and other people throughout the region, and pray that our work tonight, our being here tonight in community, might honor the principles and the values of those peoples who hold this land sacred, as we try to hold it and work with that as well. As we begin, I'm going to invite you just to sit quietly, and I'm going to invite you to take in 3 breaths and 3 out breaths, but they're all with a particular intention. So I invite you to breathe in gratitude for beauty that is all around us. And then breathe out that grace of beauty to all the communities and peoples and creatures in our region and throughout the world. I invite you to breathe in gratitude for hope, because there are so many who are caring deeply and working for life. Then breathe out that gratitude of hope to the world, to our region, that we might continue to do this work for one another. And then I finally invite you to breathe in gratitude for love that surrounds us all and infuses what we do. And then to breathe out and send that love of healing to the COP meeting that's happening, to all people in our region and all creatures and beings. And I'd like to read a very short credo then. I do presentations and things at different places, and I was up at the United Church of Santa Fe a week or so ago and for an event with them. And they had in their bulletin published a credo by a Choctaw elder and Episcopal Bishop Stephen Charleston. And I felt that it fit very well into our evening tonight, which is really one with our panel especially of talking about the work that they do, about the things that are fearful, about grief from all of the tragedies, climate change that we're experiencing, and then what keeps them going in spirit and hope. And we're also working at this point with a book and resource study on choosing Earth that is focused around that too. And the grief that we feel, but only to move through and that so that we can continue to do this important work with joy and hope and for one another. And so this speaks of that. And this Choctaw elder, Episcopal Bishop Stephen, says, "I will not be afraid, even if the future is uncertain, even if things seem beyond my control, even if I feel I cannot change all the reality. I will not be afraid. This is because I know the Spirit, love is with me and always and forever. Therefore, I can continue living and working for a better tomorrow. I can keep on loving those around me without exceptions. I can move forward in confidence to take my part in the story of my place and my time in history. I will not be afraid. And one day, no matter what happens in the world, I will rejoice in this world, the one that I helped to create out of the golden threads of hope. I will rejoice in the world, the one I helped to create out of the golden threads of hope." And that's what we're here tonight, doing this creative work infused with spirit and love. And that's what we also know are coming from the COP meeting in Egypt at this point, and challenges there. And one of the challenges former Vice President Al Gore put before the group in the beginning, he said, we have a choice between blessings and curse. And so we are about the choices for blessings and joy and our work together. So with that, I would just like to introduce tonight our panel, and I'm going to let Lynn, our moderator, Reverend Lynn Hinton, who's the director of the Conference of Churches, just move right into those introductions, and there's a lot of questions and things that they want to share with us. So thank you, Lynn, and thank you, panelists.
To make it easy, I'm just going to pass the microphone around. So if you'll just say your name and then a little bit about you. So I am Lynn Hinton, and I'm the conference director of the New Mexico Conference of Churches. This is also my home church, so I welcome you on behalf of the members here at First Congregational. Very excited to be a part of this panel and to have the opportunity to hear from these young women who are doing the good work. So if you'll introduce yourselves.
I'm Emma O'Sullivan. I'm an attorney. I work at Santa Fe Dreamers Project, which is a nonprofit serving refugees and immigrants across New Mexico and in the El Paso, Juarez border region.
Hi everyone, my name is Arcelia Isaias Gastelum, and I am also on the board with New Mexico Interfaith Power and Light as their treasurer, and I also work for the nonprofit called Renew Mexico and leading up the chapter in Arizona as well, where we advocate for renewable energy.
Hello everyone, Cynthia Gonzalez. I am from El Paso, Texas, and I work for the Missionary Society of St. Columban, where I'm in charge of doing their advocacy work around migration and environmental issues. And I'm also part of the board of IPL New Mexico El Paso region.
Hello everyone, my name is Kaylee Shoup. I'm a community organizer with Citizens Caring for the Future. We're a small grassroots environmental advocacy group, and I believe the only of our kind in Southeast New Mexico, and we work on oil and gas issues in the Permian Basin, and our group was actually born out of Interfaith Power and Light Faith Retreat back in 2019. So your work made my work possible.
So my first question, especially as we're thinking about caring for Mother Earth, is as each of you experiences something unique in climate change where you live and work, would you share with us what you're seeing on the ground, where you are? What are the climate change realities in your place on Mother Earth?
So as I mentioned, I live in the Permian Basin in southeast New Mexico, and that is the most prolific and active oil field in the country, if not the world. We kind of switch back and forth with Saudi Arabia. For those that don't know, the Permian Basin is a span of land that is southeast New Mexico and west Texas. That's always been an oil-rich area, but when fracking was invented, they figured out in about 2015 that they could get into a whole bunch of untapped oil reserves. So I believe we have the most untapped oil reserves of any basin in the world, and we also have the lowest break-even cost. So it's a really, really busy oil and gas region. Really meta level, climate change-wise, we see where we are, we're in the Chihuahuan Desert, so we're seeing extreme heat and drought. But we really, where I live, get to see what is fueling climate change, right? And the devastation that that brings to a local community and then takes, you know, to the wider world. And when you go around our area, the land is just scattered with pump jacks, pipelines, any kind of oil and gas infrastructure that you can really imagine. And it's really quite apocalyptic when you tour it. The local communities, we're seeing health impacts and just growth in our communities that we can't really sustain because it's a small town, right? So we're seeing a lot of environmental justice issues, things like that, along with climate change. Also, the Permian Basin is one of the greatest emitters of methane in the country, if not the world probably. I'm sure all of you are aware, but methane is an air pollutant that warms the atmosphere at 80 times greater strength than carbon dioxide. The good news about that is it doesn't stay in the atmosphere as long. So if we cut methane emissions, we can really, it's a trigger, right? So it can take down the temperature and help us avoid climate catastrophe to stay within that 1.5, 2 degrees Celsius. So there's a lot of devastation, but there's also, you know, a lot of potential for change where I am. And yeah, I would say that's about the gist of what I'm seeing where I live and yeah, the impacts.
Yeah, in El Paso, similar to Carlsbad, we're also seeing extreme weather, severe weather, flooding, and droughts. We live in the desert, so there's some concern for our biodiversity in the desert as well, plants and animals. That's what I think we're seeing there. There's also some concerns regarding environmental justice, and we also have the oil and gas industry, some of in the communities there, and one of the most impoverished communities of El Paso. So there's also some environmental issues there. From my line of work, I also, it's being so close to the border, we're also seeing the international effects of climate change with seeing and receiving migrants who are coming from other parts of the world, the Latin America, many people who are displaced because they don't have the same ways of living. Livelihood has been affected. They cannot grow their crops. They cannot do their usual work. So they are forced to migrate. Others because of the actual or the consequences already that they have in hurricanes and all of their natural disasters that have happened in their countries. And we, at the border in our migrant ministry, we are observing those kind of scenarios where we can clearly identify that these people are coming as a result of these negative effects that are not only here but globally. And it just is very clear for us how we are just part of one community. So that's what we're seeing and what I can relate to from El Paso.
Thank you. I reflect on this question very often because it's very interesting that in this line of work, I myself haven't personally seen the impacts of climate change or been affected. Like, I have not been displaced by wildfires. My water is still accessible. So it's very interesting being in this position because I hear it through the stories of all the people that we work with. So I see it especially with water. I think that's one of the biggest, most prominent ways that I've seen climate change impacting our communities is by hearing farmers and how the water restrictions that are happening because of how low the water flows are, like their livelihoods that they've had for generations are now at risk. And so I think for me that's kind of been the most prominent of the impacts of climate change is just this collective fear about having this uncertainty of their future, because it's the water restrictions, it's the displacement, it's the extreme weather conditions, it's all these different aspects that are going to make the future be completely different from what we've known and what we've grown up with for several generations. So I think it's very interesting that I myself have not had that experience, but I see that and I just feel very called to continue elevating these people's stories and just showing how these impacts are through their eyes.
For me, I'm from Valencia County, and of course, like, our relationship to water is historical and personal, and that's always like in the back of my mind is that like relationship to where I'm from. In my work, as an immigration attorney, we see a lot of folks, we work with a lot of folks who are crossing the border, and they cross the border for a lot of reasons, or want to cross the border, although, we've got Title 42 is still in place, which is the Trump-era border closure. And we, basically, I see climate change kind of showing up in that context of, and it's like Arcelia says, which is that, like, we don't necessarily see folks who are like, their home was burned down in a catastrophic wildfire that was caused by climate change. Maybe like the causes are a little bit more attenuated, but for example, in last year we saw a huge wave of Haitian migration, right? That was tied directly to hurricanes and natural disasters that were exacerbated by climate change. And so, like, in my work, the way that shows up is, what does our legal system do with somebody who's coming here because their country is no longer inhabitable because of climate change? And the way that we responded to that was largely to slam the door shut on them and put them back on planes to those countries. And we're not the only country who does that, right? Like, we're one of many countries who has this really rigid adherence to refugee conventions, right? That are largely about political beliefs or race, discrimination, that kind of thing. We don't have legal systems that are set up to catch climate refugees yet, right? Yet is the hope. So when I think about, how is this showing up in my work, it's, like a lot like Cynthia talks about too, that we, as legal advocates, are trying to figure out how do we advocate for individuals, and how do we report on that for systems change too? So I know we talk a lot with our congressional representatives about, hey, we're seeing folks who are coming here who need refuge, and our legal system doesn't recognize that yet. So what do we need the law changes to be able to adapt to this, because movement around the world due to climate change is starting. I mean, it's been, like since, well, for Haiti, for example, like since 2016, right? There's been like this huge Haitian diaspora that's happened because of conditions that happened due to hurricanes. We have countries in the Pacific who are buying land in other countries, literally in anticipation of their homelands being flooded. And are those other countries going to accept climate refugees? Is like an open legal question, right? So really trying to think about how do we, there's this phrase that I read recently that really stuck out at me, which was anticipated climate genocide. And that's something that we can foresee, is this need to move that's going to be happening as the world grows warmer. And are we set up for that? Are we legally going to be accepting folks needing to move around the world, or are we going to be slamming doors shut? And that's sort of just an element of what my day-to-day work looks like. But that's something that I think about.
Thank you so much to all of you. So I'm going to go off script because what you shared with us sparked a question for me, and that is, at what point in your life did you, some of you said the word call, and as a minister, it's kind of a big thing for us. We talk about when we were called to ministry, but I see all work as a call and a vocation. So I'm wondering if there was a particular point in your life when you said, somebody needs to be concerned about this, and I'm someone that needs to be concerned about this, and I'm even going to make my life about this. Can you share with us, perhaps, at what point in your life, or when did you receive that call to do this kind of work?
So I would say I received mine not too long ago. This was definitely not something that I necessarily planned on doing. But I was born and raised in Carlsbad, and I left home in 2011, and I moved home in 2018. And the fracking boom, the Permian oil boom, had been going on for about a year at that point. And I'll admittedly say I did not think about climate change much, horrifyingly enough, but I just did not. I was not very aware. And I moved home, and I was home for a year, and initially it was just noticing, we had an influx of like 20,000 people. We're a very small town, and within a year, 20,000 people are coming to our town, so there wasn't housing. The price of housing was astronomical. There wasn't enough, school space to house all these students that we had. There was daily car crashes, like all these things that really had an impact on day-to-day life. But within a year of moving back, a lot of people I knew, loosely knew, my own mother, friends of mine in their early 20s, were getting diagnosed with cancers, and not only cancers, but rare and aggressive cancers that shouldn't be hitting people as young as they were being hit with these cancers. And that's when I just started to get curious at that point. And nothing happened. COVID came, a whole year went by, and then one of the CCFF leaders, Citizens Caring for the Future, who I work for, called me, and he had seen something I put on Facebook or something. And he said, I think you would like this lady that's with Earthworks, and she's going to be here looking at pollution in the oil and gas field, if you want to come out and meet with us and see that. And I said, sure. And so that day I met them, and they told me about Citizens Caring for the Future, and that they were looking for an organizer. And at the time, I was like, I don't know if I'll do that. But it was definitely, I remember driving home that day thinking, oh, I was supposed to meet those people. And so it was definitely a calling, and it hasn't been long. It's been about 2 years. So, yeah.
Well, for me, I think I can't remember when I had this calling, because I think I felt it for a long time, maybe since I was a little girl. And it's not tied specifically, for example, to the environment and issues and the climate change situation that we're experiencing right now, but my calling is more related to my community and helping people who are in very vulnerable situations. And I think that's why I say it was since I was a little girl, because I grew up in El Paso and have family in Ciudad Juarez. I would cross the border all the time and see the disparities, see the poverty, see the struggles and the inequality. So I think it has been part of my life. And since then, I have that calling to do something to help my community and my communities now, with working with migrants who are coming to the border and who now are, part of our home, and they're welcome that way. They're welcome to our border community as their home. So now when I'm working with the Columbans, I am a little bit over a year now, I'm learning more about the environment and the situation that is happening in all these other places around the world where they have communities just like mine, who are vulnerable, who just need to be recognized first and recognized for their identity and their work. So I think my calling is more regarding the vulnerable communities. And in this current ecological crisis, I think I see the urgency and the need for me to be that voice and to help bring more awareness to all of these communities.
I think I relate a lot to what Cynthia was saying. I've always had this calling of wanting to do something that was meaningful and, just this inner desire to put something good in the world during my time on it. But that was not really, that picture of what that looked like wasn't really formed until I was in high school. And I took an environmental class, like an AP environmental science class. And that was just kind of the vision of like, oh, this is something that touches everything. Like, it's our land, it's our environment, it's science, it's policy, it's people, it's all the things all together. And like, this is a way to do many things that are very good and could help a lot of people on our planet. And so that's kind of the calling that I was following through college. And I was going more so like the science route. Like my whole life goal was to maybe like find an overgrazed patch of land and plant some like native plants on it. But then the year that I graduated was the year that our previous administration had taken us out of the Paris Agreement. And I realized, I had this moment of reckoning where I realized that all the science and all the facts don't really matter if you can't communicate it and put it out into something meaningful into the world. So that's kind of what started me down a path of like going away from, the sciencey path and literatures and stuff, and going more towards being able to communicate with people and working together to go towards a more meaningful action and, actually making like a difference together with like the communication and having everything like that be central to it. So that was, the little threads that kind of led me down like, oh, well, what if you can do this? And what if you tried advocacy? Like, I don't know what that is, but let's give it a go. And I just kept following that thread and just staying open and faithful that this was calling me towards something that I hadn't imagined. Like, I didn't really know what this kind of work entailed, but just keeping an open mind. And it's been much bigger than fixing a little patch of land somewhere.
I would say I've always had a certain amount of like respect and nerdiness about like the earth and the environment. Definitely, took environmental science in college and that kind of thing. It's always been very personal for me though. It was never something that I felt like as a career to be drawn to. So I would say that like my call to this work was a literal phone call from my friend Anne. She and I ran into each other at a demonstration at UNM because they were, there was a student group who was organizing for UNM to divest certain of their funds from polluting in other corporations, right? And divestment is a concept that I've been familiar with through my job because we had also been supportive of a divestment campaign to encourage entities to divest from private prisons that were detaining refugees and migrants. So that's like a language that I understood, right? Is like this idea of like financial movements and decisions to support social change, right? So anyways, here I am about 10 months later on the board of IPL, I think, you know, trying to mesh these, I think of them as very different, like, parts of myself. Like, the climate anxious part of me is like the same part of me that is a mom that's worried about my kids and their future. It's, you know, the part of me that is, like, rooted in my community here in central New Mexico. You know, my attorney brain is, like, a different part of my brain, but I think, like, there's definitely places where those two parts of me overlap. And hopefully, hopefully that this part of me is the baby part that is just going to get to have more opportunities to put some of those skills that I've developed as a legal advocate, maybe to work in service of my kids' futures.
All of those are very touching stories, and some of the things that I heard were, you know, to recognize the cancers that, you know, weren't there when you were a child, and suddenly so many people are now developing cancer, and you sort of putting things together and realizing this has something to do with this, to see where you are on the border and to recognize that all these other folks coming across come from the same kinds of places that you are from, yet are facing such very different things, and the whole notion of keeping an open mind and an open heart. And I love that phrase, climate anxious. I haven't heard that phrase before. I think we all feel a little bit of that climate anxiety, don't we? So Sister Joan is now going to ask a question that is burning in her heart.
This was an opportunity for others to ask questions, but there weren't any for the panel. Oh, pass it forward. Thank you. There was a question from Dick. Dick, this is a question I can talk with you and give lots of information. I'm going to touch on it later, okay? Let me just read this. In the intensity of the needs for the movement organizing in the last few years, and even this election cycle, so many people are overwhelmed by the enormity of our issues. They're burnt out, they're fearful of political violence. How are you thinking about engagement of organizing strategy for focusing people, energy, and growing your movements or your work?
Community
organizing. So Joan mentioned like political violence, things like that. Being in the Permian Basin, it's a very conservative area, and when you question oil and gas, it can put you in a very vulnerable position. And so in my work, we're always thinking about, you know, how can we best protect the people that choose to step out, because it's really, you know, it's a big decision for them to do so. A lot of people, that's how they're supported, that's how they support their family. And then also, even if you're not supporting your family that way, in our particular region, even when you question the oil and gas industry a little bit, you can get quite a bit of pushback socially on a bunch of different levels. So that's something that's always in the back of our mind, is the, you know, potential for people being ostracized from their community, but then also the potential for political violence too at the same time. There's quite a few, I guess, extremists, is what you would say, living in that region. And so that's something that we're always thinking about. The Permian is a very overwhelming place to be, because it's vast and it's large, and there are corporations that are some of the biggest corporations in the world with the most money in the world pulling the strings in our local community, and that can be quite overwhelming. And so I think what Citizens Caring for the Future has done is, first of all, stood up, which when I found out that there was a group such as Citizens Caring for the Future, I was absolutely shocked that people were doing what they were doing. I came into the game kind of late. And so just standing up and being brave and even saying that there's a problem, I think really has the potential to make a lot of change. But I think something that we're also starting to do is kind of really turn to look at our community more and what our community needs. We advocate for regulations, laws, different big picture items that can do things like cut emissions or cut production in our region. We advocate for those, but that progress is slow, and you don't always feel it quickly, especially on the front lines. And so we've started to really think, how can we help people in a really practical manner? And so we've recently bought air purifiers that we will be handing out to people living near oil and gas sites. Also educating people on how can living within a half mile of an oil and gas site harm your health? And what can you tell your doctor? Like, we're giving people handouts so that they know what to pay attention to in their own body and then talk to their doctor about, because healthcare practitioners, they're really not too aware of the health issues that can come with this either. So I think for us, organizing is really on a person-to-person level and making sure that the community is taken care of first and foremost, so that then they can maybe step out and advocate in an even larger way, and hopefully turn the tide in a big way eventually. So.
Thank you for that question. It's just so interesting and so needed at this time. What we are doing, the Missionary Society of St. Columban in our Office of Justice, Peace, and Ecology, is we're focusing on empowering those people who are interested in joining the climate movement, or just interested in being more engaged, but civically engaged themselves. We offer like advocacy trainings and just educational resources so that people can understand the situation, because there's a lot of information out there and it creates climate anxiety. It's just stressful out there, specifically for young adults, young people. So creating resources, making those connections so that at least there's a safe space for people to go. Specifically in my organization, in a Catholic organization, we're creating that space where young adults can, from around the United States, can connect. And internationally, our society does that well with young people from all over. To find a place where you can go and have peace, have people that understand you and don't judge you. And I think the church congregations overall are a perfect place to do that, because it is all of this situation is causing a lot of anxiety. It's a complicated situation, and what better place than to come back to the place where we feel hope, where we feel safe, to kind of recharge, and then go back out there in the world and fight this. Locally in El Paso, I'm working with several groups there of young people and other groups promoting Laudato Si, the letter from our Pope, which has been a great gift, a blessing, that help us expand and bring awareness again to the situation. And I think, again, the goal is to create a safe space, to create more resources where people can do this work from a faith angle, from a social angle, from a personal, just being more empowered. And I'm glad to kind of give a shout out to Odile over there, that she's doing a lot of work with me in El Paso, kind of promoting Laudato Si, and again, creating that safe space for people.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to learn how to organize during one of the most politically divisive times of my lifetime. Just coming in when we were more politically divided than I've ever had memory of. And then also to add a global pandemic on top of it, has just been all these different complications in trying to communicate the different issues and the sentiments that people are feeling. And I just definitely feel that I got very lucky in that I got to come from a place of hope and just have this be an opportunity. We have an opportunity to make changes and do something better. And imagine if these changes would actually be better for society. If we had more clean energy, what if that was more reliable? What if that was less polluting? And what if there was more, better for our economy and all these different areas that people don't really think about? So in that sentiment, I definitely have felt that too, that it's very overwhelming. The problems are so overwhelming and it's just one after the other. But then it's good to remember that the solutions are also overwhelming. There's huge movements happening all over. New Mexico, we were the third state in the country to pass 100% clean energy legislation. There's so many movements happening all over, just because people are realizing this is possible. What if this is something that can happen? And just being able to reach people in this time when it's hard to listen and hard to communicate and reach across this very big divide. I think having these messages of hope and coming from the heart and just telling each other's stories and just having this imagination of something greater than what we have currently. Like, change can be scary. Like, that's definitely something I think everyone in this room and outside this room can reflect and like has felt. Like, change is very, very terrifying, no matter what the situation is. But what if the change can be something good? And I think that's something that's very important to hold on to when it feels very overwhelming.
I don't have a ton to add to those answers because they were fantastic, but just to the point of like things being overwhelming and to the problems being so multifaceted that it's hard to figure out like where to get started. One thing that I like, just like a thought that I find to be very helpful is the idea of parallel processes, that not necessarily every person needs to be engaged on every single thing at the same time, and kind of figuring out like what's my place. Where am I an expert? Where am I a supporter? Where am I listening? Where am I learning? Who's the smartest at that specific problem? You know, you don't have to do everything. Like, every person doesn't have to do everything. And God, how confusing and overwhelming would it be if we were? So I take a lot of solace in knowing that we've got excellent, wonderful local organizers and activists here. So I don't have to necessarily be that person, because we, you know, I can be a different kind of thing, and I can be engaged on different kinds of issues. And that's one way that kind of helps deal with that overwhelm for me personally.
Thank you all so much. So our final question is meant to encourage all of us when it seems we face such a dismal outlook on climate change. Archbishop Desmond Tutu shared quite a lot of his need for hope as he worked with the Truth and Reconciliation Committee following the violent end to apartheid. In the book, The Book of Joy, he is quoted as saying, "I believe with a steadfast faith that there can never be a situation that is utterly, totally hopeless. Hope is deeper than optimism and very, very close to unshakable. Resignation and cynicism are easier, more self-soothing postures that do not require the raw vulnerability and tragic risk of hope. To choose hope is to step firmly forward into the howling wind, bearing one's chest to the elements, knowing that in time the storm will pass. In your work to protect Mother Earth, it must get despairing at times and feel, as we've talked about, overwhelming. What spiritual disciplines do you practice to remain hopeful, to stand into the howling wind, and stay engaged in your work?"
So I'll be honest, I really struggle with maintaining that hope a lot of the time, just because, you know, home for me is a kind of a constant reminder of the problems that we face and how, you know, what's happening in my own backyard is having this huge impact on the world. And so I will say that it's something that I'm still learning to balance. And there's a lot of fear, and learning to coexist with that and be okay with it and carry it gracefully is something that I'm learning to do. And I guess one way I would say for me that spiritual practices that kind of help me stay hopeful and grounded is really being with the community of people in Carlsbad and Southeast New Mexico that are doing this work. As I mentioned, they're incredibly brave, and the fact that they started all of this was incredibly brave. And so being with them in community in the times we are, validating each other, and also connecting with Mother Earth through rituals. Joan leads often rituals and things like that. That for me really fills me up and keeps me going in this work when it does get overwhelming or it seems like it's really just a drop in the bucket. It's those moments that I go back to. The other thing that definitely gives me hope, especially after the week we had, is young people and young people showing up and being aware of the issues that we have and wanting to be a part of the solution. That is so important, and for me personally really uplifted me. So that would be probably how I maintain hope, is through community.
Yeah, I think my answer is the same one as Kayleen, but I want to start with saying, and because I felt how you were describing what you feel, and it's the same case for me, being so close to the border. When I started this work, like being more specifically inserted in the climate, environmental justice advocacy, migration advocacy, it was quite the time to be in it. Like of course, the pandemic still happening, the Ukraine war, the influx of migrants, refugees who we're now seeing, all the negative effects, the fires, you name it. So I came in this very specific time last year, and it was too much, and definitely it took me get all my tools in terms of prayer and connecting with God. But one of the ones that helped me the most was really going out there with nature, and just like I would go to the park because I live in a city in El Paso, so I would just go to a park, lay on the ground, touch the grass, and kind of like stay rooted. When I have the opportunity, the closest places for me to experience nature is Ruidoso and Cloudcraft. So I go and escape a little to the forest and just be quiet and listen to nature. But the biggest one that has helped me is connecting with community, other people who are doing the work, and I'm so blessed to meet many people here doing the climate justice work, because it helps have hope that we are, doing progress. And even though, it might be frustrating at times, knowing that we're doing something, that is already giving us hope. And another one for me, as I work really closely with migrants who come to, for me, connecting with them and hearing their stories help me ease my anxiety all global issues that are happening, because they are so resilient, and they come with an incredibly journey that few people can understand what they go through. And just by doing that, they show us how much we should fight for life. So having just regular conversations with them and their stories, hearing that they want a better future for the children, they really have this hope for life, has been the best for me. It has helped me the most in this job.
Yes, definitely agree. Community is healing. Just having the space of affirmations that you're not doing this alone, that there's a space to hold your grief, to hold your joys and your successes, and the triumphs and the times that you have to get knocked down to get back up again. That's definitely like a huge part of it. I definitely don't think any one of us could go very far without having that connection to one another. And then another thing for me as well is just being receptive to, where the universe wants to lead you. Like, that's something that I learned and has kind of helped me maintain this path that I don't really know where I'm going towards. But it's led me from, from Arizona, and then going into this kind of work and connecting with IPL and all these incredible people, and just doing things that I never thought I'd get to be part of, and just seeing all these different signs and being receptive. And I think just being able to bear witness and observe, and like have these affirmations from the universe kind of like along the way has helped me a lot as well. To have faith, like it's kind of like a sign for me of like, oh, there's a purpose, like this is a drop here, a drop there, but it's strategic. And so it's just, I think that faith in it leading towards something, and just seeing how it's kind of coming together in hindsight. I'm like, okay, like that for me, I think helps me to keep going, that it's something that is on purpose.
Yeah, I guess for me, I see I'm a Catholic by birth and education and spirituality, and one thing that has always been like a really rooting part of that faith tradition for me is this kind of concept that despair is sort of a temptation, and that it's like easy to get sucked into it and to indulge in it, but that for us anyway, for Catholics, we have this, like our most holy, most ritual day of our year is Easter Vigil, not Easter morning. Easter Vigil is like our most sacred traditional space, and that's the day before Jesus rises from the dead, right? So that's that moment when there's such heavy grief and there's doubt and there's uncertainty and you don't know yet what the outcome is going to be, right? That's faith. Is like if you knew that it was going to turn out fine, that's knowledge, right? You don't need faith for that if you know what's going to happen. So you need to kind of figure out how do you resist the temptation to despair and to make space for your grief and to kind of get into that sort of Holy Saturday sort of mindset of like, can I believe that something better is coming? And just sort of think about that. So that's a space whenever I feel the temptation to despair, I try and remember my Holy Saturday brain of like, all right, this is a dark moment. But is it, like, can I have some faith and some hope that things are going to get better? And that's the sort of spiritual grounding place that I try to go to.
Thank you so much. These were so important for all of us to hear, because certainly all of us yield to that temptation to despair. So we are reminded tonight of the importance of community. So if you feel like you're alone, to remember that you are not, and to seek out others who are working on some of the same issues you are and have the same concerns you are. To remember that there are young people who are concerned about these things that so many of my generation have left uncared for. To remember to go out into nature. One of the books that I wrote started with the question of, can beauty save us? And so I wrote about a florist and flowers, and at the end of the book realized, yes, indeed, beauty can save us. So I do think being in nature is so healing and important. And the other piece that I thought about in what was shared of lying on the earth and seeing the sky is to remember that this is who we're caring for. So to stay literally in touch with the planet, to care for that, to touch the planet, to let the water run through your fingers, I think is a part of our healing and wholeness. I also love that you mentioned to hear the stories of those who suffer, because sometimes we think we have it so bad, and then we hear the story of those just trying to get here, because here is not so bad for them, and to hear what they have come through to get here can kind of give us the resilience to stay in the fight. Also, I think to hear being receptive to the universe and understand that there's meaning and purpose, and to look for those affirmations, to look for those signs that will remind us we are on the good path. And I love, Emma, what you were saying with the despair being a temptation. And to remember that for those of us of faith, we're not just about Easter, but also in that time before Easter. And I have to say, as a woman, I'm just very buoyed by the fact that these are young women up here. And certainly remembering that it was the women who stayed at the cross, who didn't leave in the midst of the suffering. So I am cheered and feel exhilarated by your concern, and more than just your concern, but your faith and your willingness to stay in the fight. I will close this part of our session with a story some of you may have heard. Brian Stevenson, the author of Just Mercy, talks about meeting Rosa Parks for the first time. She had invited him to her house. Some of the older civil rights workers were meeting together. And so Rosa Parks asked Brian Stevenson about what he was doing. And he explained about his work with over-incarceration of African Americans, about the incarceration of young black men, and all that he was working to do. And Rosa Parks said to him, "My God, that's going to make you tired, tired, tired." And then she said, "That's why you must be brave, brave, brave." So thank you all. Be brave, brave, brave. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn, for moderating this wonderful sharing and discussion. Thank you so much. And I think we should just give them another hand. And send them our promise to be in community and loving action together in community. Yes. So I have to say, I feel real honored to work with these young adults and others as well, and it's such a gift. And intergenerational work is really, really important for us all. So I would like to next just give a very brief overview of the highlights of the year, and then we're going to have our Seed and Sprout Awards for this year. And then after that, we're going to move back out into the entryway area after we have a little prayer, and we're going to have a raffle, and you can just talk to our panelists again, and you can talk to some of the people at the tables who have all kinds of things going on. So just to share a little bit about our year. So when you came in, you had a sheet. You picked up a sheet that just gave an overview, so I'm going to just assume you're going to read that, you've read that, and I'm just going to show you a lot of pictures. So I'm just going to keep raising my hand when I need the next slide. So, we continue to do a lot of education, retreats, inspiration things. This is a picture of one of the gentlemen that led us in a spring kind of series, Claudio, and that was just marvelous and very enlightening. And then right now we're having Choosing Mother Earth series, and there's also resources on the website, and one of the it's a creative, spiritual, and also addressing grief and climate, so it is a whole body kind of experience. And one of the assignments is to create altars, and this is one of the altars that one of our people created. As you know, we've extended our work down into El Paso and southern New Mexico more, and quite thrilled with that. And this is a picture of some of the good folks in El Paso meeting with a bishop down there about the work. And we continue to do the spring IPL National Week of Faith and Climate Action. This last year, it was a Sacred Trust focused on young adults or youth. And we'll be doing that, a different theme again in April. And during that Earth Day, this is some of the folks over at Campus Ministry with Lutheran Campus Ministry, and they did some creative things around campus. They were quite fun. We've also done, after this next week, we've worked with Kaylee down with Citizens Caring for the Future to do some immersion retreat experiences. And this is the last one that we had just a few weeks ago with folks from Gallup and El Paso and here in Albuquerque area. And here they are again. And we started at Carlsbad Caverns, and then we went out into the oil and gas field. This is a picture of one of our Mennonite pastors. Mennonites who are here might recognize Pastor Nick King. He's one of the CCF leaders down there, and this is just a picture out in the oil and gas field with a lot of oil and gas things. And there's Kaylee with the air purifier, which this is a Catholic pastor down there who received the first one, and we'll be meeting with some of his women congregants soon. And this was another immersion retreat experience, and Stephen Pica shared with Kaylee a very special sacred vessel holding prayers for the Permian, for the people there that she carries with her and has with her in this work. And this was a Laudato Si event over in Gallup. Now, Odile has been working with folks in the South for Laudato Si events as well. This one in Gallup was in the summer, and from that has been initiated some work with some communities there for land restoration, education, and more tree planting, which we continue to do a lot of tree planting. And here's another picture of that workshop out there in Navajo land. And we continue to do when we can, just focused spiritual kind of events. This is one for healing of water. On the windiest day I think we had in the entire spring at the river with Grandmother Nancy, who has a water song, and we've done this several times, but we were being blown away here, as you can see. But we are persistent and brave in the face of all kinds of winds. We have been so excited to do the Interfaith Forest of Bliss project with Sacred Land, Sacred Water, and Aaron is sitting back here with the Sikh community, and he's at the table back there as well in the hall. And they were the ones that initiated this. It's been an interfaith project, and we planted many trees of all sorts, and they have just been marvelous with this project, and it's really fun and exciting. One of our little friends helping with planting trees and watering. And just recently we had small tree giveaways, and these are Ruth and one of our members from up in Santa Fe receiving some of their trees. And here is Emma from here at UCC, and she is also getting trees. And we did about 150 trees and shrubs. We'll be doing that again. In fact, at the table out there, you can sign up to get your trees for the springtime. And then Odile has been working with some folks down in the south in gardening, and this was one of those, the farm down there by Anthony and Las Cruces. So just a variety of things. This is Judy and a member of Congregation Albert doing their Earth Day tending of the earth, and also they have a wonderful pollinator garden. We have a great, cool congregations committee. This is a picture of St. Thomas of Canterbury just to show their trom wall. But we are working a lot with faith communities to do solar, et cetera, and there was a question about the Inflation Reduction Act. There will be direct paybacks for houses of worship, faith communities who install solar. That will not be available till in 2023. Just wait for information, because we're getting the information. We'll be having a webinar about that. Very excited about that. We also do lots of public policy advocacy, and of course, lots of it's still online. This is a picture of people online of IPL doing that. And there's Arcelia and myself. We did go to DC for the National IPL meeting the first time in 3 years, and we met with our congressional people, and here's Representative Teresa Ledger Fernandez, and here is our Senator Martin Heinrich that we met with. So we had very good meetings that were encouraging. And in public policy advocacy, we're very pleased. Carlos has worked so hard for many, many years with Bread for the World, and now with the Interfaith Hunger Coalition and Interfaith Power and Light at the national level. Here locally, we'll be working together collaboratively to try to push some climate engagement in the Farm Bill that'll be coming up in the next year. So now I'd like to move on to, that was very fast. We can talk more later. There's many more things to talk about, but we're just moving along because we want to celebrate Seed and Sprout awardees. And these are folks that we recognize every year for amazing work that they've done throughout the year. And so we have one Seed Award. The Seed Awards are for faith communities that have done amazing things. And so Terry, why don't you come up here, because you're going to help me with this. And in just a minute, but we wanted to show some pictures of our Seed honoree, which is the Monastery of Christ in the Desert, way up in the northwest part of the state. And this is a beautiful picture of their part of their monastery, their area at night along the Chama River. And just to say that since they landed there in 1964, they really have been very taken with the beauty of that region and see themselves as stewards and in prayer and in what they do with the land, with the water, with that place. And so the buildings, everything that they've created have had that in mind, as well as their Benedictine charism of simplicity and humility, stability, and hospitality, because they have retreatants that come there as well. So they have created these buildings using some straw bales and also adobe and other natural things. This is another view of their area. I've been there and made retreat. It's just an amazing, very sacred area held for eons and eons by the native peoples of this land as well. And so they have done appropriate technology, sustainable technology, and this shows some more of the plant. And so they've moved into solar, so they are off-grid, and they have batteries, and they have a generator if they need to do backup. And they are also, in the construction of their buildings, they use passive solar. So they're trying to get as much as they can in a very natural way. And then they've also done water management. And this is the Chama River. And so they're totally dependent on the earth and this interrelationship spiritually and sustainably with the earth, and that whole knowing in their very life every day that they're one and connected. And so for their water system, they use infiltration through the Chama River, which is about 50 feet away, and the water is disinfected and pumped uphill to 3 storage tanks that supply the monastery with all their water, and the drinking water is further purified by reverse osmosis. And they also have a wetlands that they use, and here's just another picture of the water and some of their water setup. And they're doing some very creative water projects right now as well, and Dagmar is here, and she's going to help with that. But we want to give you an award. So is that Brother Bede back there? Is Brother Bede here? Brother Bede is not here. Something must have happened because he was going to be here. Dagmar, why don't you come up and you can just accept their award for them, and then we'll get back with them. I hope that they're okay.
For me to accept an award for a monastery.
So Terry is going to give the awards, and I just want to say that all the awardees are getting a plaque, and this is called the Seed Award because it's the 3 sisters, the seeds that grow together in community, nurture one another, and provide food and life for the community. And then they're also receiving from one of our local artists prayer cards that are spiritual practice that will help them in the ongoing work. And then for Christ in the Desert, they're also receiving a bag of seeds and pozole and things that they can use with their community.
Thank you, Joan. And for this year's Seed Award, we are honored to give it to Christ in the Desert Monastery.
Sure. Thank you very much. I obviously can't accept a prize like this for an all-male monastery, but I'd like to say a few more things about them and the partnership that I have. I work for the Bureau of Reclamation, a federal agency, and have developed a very strong and unlikely partnership with the Christ in the Desert because of the stewardship that Sister Joan was talking about, the sense of place and their stewardship to the land and the water there, the place that they're devoting their lives to. And so Brother Bede, who for some reason wasn't able to join us tonight, is a partner with us and with me particularly and my colleagues in science on the river that can help us in understanding changes that are underway there and ways that we can better manage the system. Our organization, our agency runs the dam at the head and so determines the flows that come down. But we're doing studies on things like the bugs, the macroinvertebrates in the river, the bugs that fly around and how they change with the turbidity of our releases. And he's been very active in collecting the bugs and turning in the samples to us every week all summer long for the last several years. We're putting in sensors in the river to understand what kind of flows are needed to mobilize the beds to increase the health of the stream. So there's been a tremendous amount of work on the stewardship there, and it's been a really great partnership for us. So Brother Bede asked me to come and talk about that work and some of the other work that we're doing, because I work in climate change planning here in Albuquerque, and my focus is on doing the science and outreach to the community. And I'm hearing this panel here talking about the importance of community.
This is something that I believe strongly, and which is why this group here it's been inspiring me for a long time. I finally came here, met you all in person, and I'm even more inspired. It's the kind of thing that we need to do to move forward. So I run some collaborations myself out of the agency and hope to inspire more kinds of collaboration like we have with the Christ in the Desert, with your organizations. One thing that I'm doing is I'm the project manager for something called the Rio Grande Basin Study, where we're trying to get different organizations from throughout the basin, the upper Rio Grande Basin, to collaborate together to vision a future. And then we use technological modeling tools to try to evaluate with the water supply and land use we have, those sorts of things, try to model a collective vision and see what's physically possible within our system, and would love to have this organization be part of that, to expand that kind of community. I also wanted to mention, you talked about the Inflation Reduction Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act and also the bipartisan infrastructure law are providing a lot of funding to communities to develop climate change adaptations as well as mitigation programs, like you were talking about with the solar panels. And a lot of that money in the bipartisan infrastructure law is going through these water smart programs, which my group manages here locally. There's programs to improve your water use efficiency, to develop watershed groups, to develop small storage, to improve your interconnections, replace pipes, physical things like that, that just help you with the stewardship of your water, because we all know that our water supply here in this precious community is decreasing. So I'm happy to be a contact for you in trying to get access to that funding if you have an organization like Christ in the Desert who might be able to take advantage of that because you have some sort of water and power management authority. So I am happy to be a partnership with any other way, with you in any other way that you can think of, because I'm so inspired by your desire to use community collaboration across different faiths and different kinds of people to try to work towards this great challenge that is climate change. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Dagmar's going to be outside afterwards, so you can talk with her and ask her more questions about what kind of programs might qualify for this. So thank you so much, and we're thrilled.
Shall I deliver this to the monastery?
If you could, and we have a whole bag of this.
Well, I will find an opportunity to get up there soon. It's always a pleasure.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. And we'll be in touch with them too. But thank you. I think afterwards we're going to have questions out in the hallway and conversations. So good resources here. So yes.
Okay, great. And if
So thank you.
wants my contact information, I'm happy to share that as well.
Okay, good. So thank you again. Congratulations, Christ in the Desert. And then we have several Sprout Awards this year. And speaking of water, the first Sprout Award goes to Betsy Diaz, who is a wonderful, faithful member of La Mesa Presbyterian Church. And she does everything water. Oh my gosh. And so we are very pleased. Oh, Betsy, you don't, oh, okay.
And for our 2022 Sprout Award, we'd like to, it is our honor to give it to you, Betsy, this year. Thank you.
And ask her if she'd like to say something. Thank you. And if you'd like to say something.
I have to say that I'm not a Sprout myself. I turned 80 this week, but I want to say that I am a graduate of Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio, which died because we didn't have rich people in our alumni group. But my class was honored to have the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as a commencement speaker. And when I could no longer work with children and families, I turn to water. And I have discovered that my training and experience in working with relationships is probably the greatest gift that I can give to water work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And then our next award goes to someone that I'm happy to introduce you to tonight, because I don't think any of you really know her, and that is Caitlin Bryson. And she is an amazing young woman who's doing very creative projects, integrating science and art and her own deep spiritual path in terms of bioremediation. And she's going to receive the award, and then I think she's going to just talk a little bit about a project she's doing that we'd like to maybe invite folks here to engage in.
And for our 2022 Sprout Award, it is our honor to present it to Caitlin Bryson.
Thank you. Hello, thank you so much. Thank you for this wonderful, beautiful evening, actually, and I'm deep honor. So I am an artist and an ecologist, and I studied art and ecology in graduate school at the University of New Mexico here in Albuquerque, where I sort of concurrently studied art and mycology, which is the study of fungi. And my research was in ecotoxicology, so toxicity in the land. And my art practice, I'm a practicing artist. I work and live in Santa Fe. And it looks at applying the intersection between art and science to create change, to actualize change, and to create opportunities for people to engage with climate change issues, but looking specifically at how we can be hopeful about those things. So that's what I'm currently thinking about and working with. And I have some information and ideas about, or to share with y'all about a project that I am currently working on that is called Bellow Forth. And this project seeks to engage with communities all over New Mexico and ask questions about or the simple question of what are you most grateful about in your community and of this land. And those questions will be collected and embroidered onto a very large-scale quilt that then is going to be buried in a healthy forest to sort of collect native microbes and mycorrhizal species. Those species actually help foster, they foster resiliency in native saplings. When you plant trees, if you kind of boost the roots with these native microorganisms, it helps in reforestation processes. So this is a really long story, but it's looking at how we can sort of imbricate our gratitude and our love of place and offer that to the ground so that it actually quite literally feeds microorganisms, and then working with those microorganisms to do reforestation projects. This artwork is specifically going to be working in lands that were impacted by a wildfire. I received some funding from the New York Foundation of Arts to hold community sessions, to collect and gather these stories, as well as to offer resources for folks that have been impacted. So a lot of this New York money is coming to New Mexico to help folks here who have been impacted. So I have some stuff to share with you out there if you're interested, and then if you have something that you would like to add to the quilt, I would love to take that down. And if you want to be involved in the project in any way, I can get your contact information. Thank you.
Wonderful. So Kate, thank you so much. And you can visit with her afterwards, and just thrilled about this creative project. Wonderful. So our last a Sprout Award, Terry, I'm going to let you announce, is a surprise, and Terry's going to announce who it is.
I guess I have the honor of making this a real surprise. Our final Sprout Award for tonight is given to somebody who I believe has done a really wonderful job for us in the state and for Mother Earth. And it is proud for me to present to her and the Mexican Interfaith and El Paso Power and Light to Miss Kaylee Shoup.
Goodness. Well, this is like, I'm going to try not to cry. This is a big surprise. Interfaith Power and Light and the work you all do and the community you build, as I said, is why I get to do my work. And I've been a community organizer for a year and a half now. And it really is how I found community again. My community has changed a lot, and getting to do this work has given me my community back and has brought me to all this new community. And this is a wonderful surprise, and I'm honored to work with you all. And thank you so much.
So those are our awardees, and we're so grateful to be in this vast community together. And we're just going to close with a prayer that Terry is going to offer us, or a reflection. And then we're going to head out into the hall and see who wins some of those wonderful raffle things. And you can visit with people more and get information. So thank you again for coming, for being here, for sharing in this work together and spreading the word, the prayer, the loving actions throughout our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. It's a hard act to follow, going behind Joan and anything. But I kind of wanted to kind of set the tone and a kind of an atmosphere for everybody tonight. And if you want to close your eyes, but I want you to find a place, that's kind and peaceful and clear to you for yourself, whether it's clean air, fresh water, a beautiful landscape, trees, mountains, valleys, rolling hills, whatever that may be, or there's clear flowing rivers and lakes. The lakes where you can see the bottom, and it is a place of quiet and calm, where you can hear the birds whistling, animals scurrying around, and so forth. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us here today and giving us the spirit, energy, and conscience to be here and celebrate life, spirituality, brother and sisterhood, and honoring of our existence on your beautiful Mother Earth. Dear Lord, although we live in a time of mixed efforts and messages in protecting Mother Earth, where we know it is not enough, we do live in a time of so much uncertainty of where we are headed with protecting your gift of humankind. Dear Lord, however, there is hope. Hope in protecting Mother Earth due to human beings like those gathered here tonight, whose tireless and caring work continues to impact and bring to light what needs to be done and how it can be done in a spiritual impact and impactful way. Dear Lord, continue to give us strength, guidance, vision, insight, and show us the path to continue our work where one day we will see clean air, beautiful landscapes, and clear rivers and lakes so that Mother Earth will flourish for the next 7 generations. Amen. Thank you.